Our gospel reading tonight is from the book of John. Now before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who is bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him, and for this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." But after he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set an example, that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. The Gospel of our Lord. Harking back to our Old Testament lesson. After this whole virus thing is over, what would it be like if people all over the world marked the doorposts and the lintels of their homes with a sign that clearly stated, "Members of our household were spared the tragedy of death"? During the coronavirus outbreak of 2020, widespread death has a different meaning in our day, and circumstances are quite different than in ancient times. But the threat of death is still real. The death of all Egyptian firstborn offspring was both a plague and a punishment, neither of which we need to apply to the coronavirus. So when once again we have the opportunity to gather together and remember that we too have been saved as God's chosen people, will we express it adequately? Is the fact that you are alive this evening a profound enough occurrence for you to make today a day of remembrance, a festival of celebration to the Lord? I suggest that it is. If we look at what things transpire right before Jesus confidently gets up from the table, dons an apron and begins to wash the feet of his disciples, we might find something particular to borrow. Something that can potentially help us make the most of our time at home. 3 things stuck out to me: an awareness of timing, an ability to take stock in the relationships that we have, and a belief that our calling is key. These 3 things enhanced an ability to get up and act like Jesus. Number 1, Jesus knew that his hour had come. He recognized a particular moment as pivotal. Something inside him registered, I have arrived at a moment in time that in some way fulfills my destiny. How about you? As most aspects of pre-COVID-19 life have screeched to a halt and hold at a virtual standstill, each of us is experiencing a temporary delay in timekeeping. Like that wall clock in your kitchen whose battery has been removed to stop its second hand, we too have had our knobs twisted and hands moved. Government removed the AAA battery/plugs/supply of energy that normally kept you going. And the financial flow that had allowed us to maintain the status quo has for many been cut off. In an attempt to promote safety and recalibrate American society, the government is working to reset the hands of our proverbial life clocks without ruining our chances of ever being able to keep time in the future. Our rhythms have been broken. What we used to do is no longer possible, but we can be reset. And in the meantime, what can this shelter-in-place period mean for you and your family? Think about the timing. Number 2, relationships. The first relationship Jesus took stock in was the one to his Father. He knew from whom and where he came and to whom and where he was going. Now, some of us are very proud of whom and where we've come, and others do not or cannot feel so proud. Aside from what your personal ancestry or history tells you, author Elizabeth Gilbert posits the idea of universal inherited resilience. She said something like this: if you're alive, you're a survivor. You are the beneficial recipient of generations worth of evolutionary selection. You are living proof of inherited resilience. In this time of uncertainty, as we watch the value of our bank account and investment portfolio diminish, as we worry about the possibility of the worst socioeconomic crisis since the Great Depression, we can at least take heart knowing this: the value of the stock you come from has undiminished worth. Because we too have a relationship to take stock in with God. We were known before our birth, are cherished now, and forever will be claimed by God in heaven. So go ahead, check off the categories of your time and relationship status, because you are 2/3 ready and able to act like Jesus. Number 3, Jesus took satisfaction in knowing that he had tried his best. He was satisfied that he had loved his own and loved them to the utmost. Man, I wish I could say that and believe it. The truth is, sometimes I have and sometimes I haven't. All of us sometimes love others with less than our utmost. But each and every time you choose to love, or let someone else love you, you participate in the very same love that brought Jesus utmost satisfaction. Imagine that. and then consider who you might choose to love again or anew. Who either needs to give or receive some love while being sheltered in. In contrast to normal indulgences, when Jesus rose from the table, he willingly left his place of comfort. As for me, all I've done lately is add more pillows to my seat at the sofa. Jesus pushed himself away from attempts to fill himself more. Lord, I must confess, with on-demand episodes of The Crown, Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, American Idol, Star Trek The Next Generation, and more, I've been feasting on food and entertainment. In an attempt to cope with indoor isolation, Americans are binging on comfort, looking for more and easier ways to fill and satisfy themselves. What would it mean for you to act like Jesus and push away from some such activities? Again, in contrast to my attire of late, Jesus felt the need to change his garments and don an apron in order to get to work. Well, my attire of late can best be described as dressed down casual, a mild step up from sleepwear. So perhaps like me, you won't need to change clothes to get to work. But before we go further, let's pause drawing comparisons between us and Jesus. What D.A. Carson notes in his commentary on John's Gospel is this: parallels between what Jesus does and what we do need to stop here in order to make this point. That both the crucifixion and foot washing were simultaneous acts of God through Christ. They are both things Jesus did through which human beings were made either free or clean. And as fun as it is to draw human parallels to the divine through Jesus, we don't want to lose track of his godliness, because he himself certainly did not. Jesus knew that God the Father had given all things into his hands. All power that came from above was in his hands. But let's think. What did he then choose to do with his hands? Wash feet. Why? Because belief in his call to serve meant affirming that call through an act of service. Had Jesus been like any other human and chose to act purely on emotion, knowing that the devil had just twisted the heart of one disciple, he could have raised his hand then and there to defeat the devil and stop Judas. But instead, what did he do? He washed Judas' feet. Jesus shows us that thriving in difficult moments involves being present, because the present time is the only one that you can claim. The people present to you offer you an opportunity to serve, to deepen whatever connection you have. You know, Jesus had been with his disciples for about the length of a new car warranty, approximately 3 years. They had traveled many miles, eating, walking, and sleeping together, so to speak, but not once had any of them washed each other's feet. That had been left to slaves, podiatrists, and pedicurists. Now, while some of us crave having our feet held, rubbed, and pampered, many don't dream of it, and if they did, they'd call it a nightmare. We just don't expose our feet to be washed by loved ones, much less a lead member of our social group. I can just imagine the response I'd get if I tried to turn a dartball game into a foot washing event. They'd say, "We should never have let that pastor in." The guys I know would be just as uncomfortable as Jesus' disciples were. They'd refuse to let it happen. But then there'd probably be one man like Peter who would protest at first, but then pull off his work boots, peel off his sweaty socks, and look for the soaking tub. There's a point I have to make about society's current trend to give credit to the universe, to meditate and pray to the universe. Authors, TV personalities, and survivors of life-threatening events speak readily about how they asked the universe for help and it changed everything. They credit the universe for aligning circumstances for their benefit. And I say that they are fooling themselves and forgetting the witness of Jesus Christ. To use some common vernacular, there ain't no universe ever going to love. There's no universe that's going to forgive. No universe is going to wash people's feet. Only God in the form of Jesus and God in the heart of another human being would do that. God, creator of all things in heaven and on earth, sent Jesus to wash feet, to love and forgive automatically, knowing no boundaries, setting no prerequisites or need for permission to do so. You see, Jesus didn't ask his disciples to volunteer or get in line to get their feet washed. He simply poured water in a basin and began to wash them and wipe them. Jesus brought a towel and a bath basin to the bedside, like we did as student nurses in the 70s. Lots of care was taken to keep that water warm. We kept germs from spreading by washing body parts in correct order. We tried hard not to soak the mattress, and for the comfort of the person in our hands, arms and legs were cradled and lovingly draped. That's who Jesus is. That's how we thrive in times of isolation, by connecting with each other more intimately, appropriately, according to each person's deep need for love, forgiveness, and service. God is glorified when people act as both givers and receivers, but don't stress out about it. The work is being done by God and is given for our sake. Amen.